when it's something that like is, I lost my pen, is in my pocket, is like in my brain. I've done this lesson before. Actually, the first women's conference we ever had, I think it was the first one, I did the heart. That was my portion. But what happens over time is that through life and through experiences, the words, they don't change, they just mean more. So for me, I'm like, oh man, like this one is like jam-packed, loaded in on so many levels. So I'm gonna move through it probably more slowly than I do some of my other words, just so I make sure that what I understand is conveyed to you properly, because we're gonna make some swift transitions. We're gonna deal with a little bit of psychology. We're going to deal with a little bit of anatomy, and then we'll get into the normal process of how we deal with this, okay? So the week before last, if you watched the video, we did Purge Me, right? So we talked about the purging process that happens during Pesach. So first we'll do some reflection as a group and online. So reflecting on what has happened through your Pesach week. Did anybody experience purging? So did you experience purging? And so in the sense of, did you have to encounter things during that time that were trying? Right? Did you have to mentally process things or deal with things that maybe were thoughts or things you hadn't thought of before, or maybe were reoccurring things that you had solidified during that time? Okay, because so that's that process. During that process of I would call it introspection, because what you do when you're not eating bread is that now all you're thinking about is your body. What am I eating? What am I putting in my body? What am I putting in? What am I doing? So it's one of those times where you're truly focused on input. What you put into your system, what you put into your system. So spiritually, it's also input, because you're thinking about what you're putting into your system, what you're putting into your system, what you're putting into your system. Yosh made a joke point that was really good. He was like, if people were searching for sin, like they searching for leaven during Passover, we would be in a lot better position just as a nation or as a people. But that is the picture, that is the physical picture. Okay. So this week, we'll set the intention with, we're going to cover a couple of things. We're dealing with the heart. Now, every person in this room I know has a different idea or definition of what the heart is, whether it's scripturally, whether it's just what they believe, whether it's what they feel, whatever it is. So I'm going to dispel a couple of myths, first of all, by putting things into the concrete. And I'm also probably going to hurt some people's feelings, because I'm going to tell you some truths that were very real for me. And if they were real for me, not that I am the testing point of everything, but if it hits me, I feel like if I convey it properly, it'll also prick you all the same. So my launching pad, because I don't pick a word just out of thin air, it has to have a point to it. So if someone can read for me Psalm 51, 1 through 9, in a loud enough voice so that people online can also hear what we're reading. Because this is what we talked about, or the process of purging from the king/prophet Dawid. So if you have it, read it so we can. Psalm 59, 1 through 9. You got it? Sarah?
Mercy on me.
Loud.
Have mercy on me, O Elohim, according to your loving kindness. According unto the multitude of your tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you, you only have I sinned and done this evil in your sight, that you might be justified when you speak and be clear when you judge. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. Behold, your desire truth in my inward parts, and in the hidden part you shall make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all mine iniquities. Creating a
Yeah. So that was 1 through 9, which directly deals with what we were talking about, which is the purging process. So the prophet king, right, knew something about the process. First, he asked for cleansing. He was like, I'm not even going to get to what my issue is, flat out. So contextually, Psalm 51 was not about him sleeping with Bathsheba.
No.
That's not the context of Psalm 51. Everybody always makes that the context. If you read the whole thing in context, it's the blood guiltiness. It's him killing Uriah.
Right.
I'm going to take it a step deeper, and then I'll explain it throughout this. His issue was with his mind. See, his thought process was jacked because he didn't give a dang about killing nobody. He was a killer.
Right.
King David killed people.
He did.
So he justified his killing, and he filtered it through Torah. And so the next verse, because he's like, I mean, you can wash me from the physical sin. He's like, but this thing that's going on in my head is what I can't quite shake. So his next verse is, create in me a clean heart, O Yah, and renew a right spirit within me. Right? His problem was his mind was jacked up. He was like, dang, I'm thinking I'm doing what's right. Because he didn't even realize, if you get the context, the reason why Nathan the prophet was sent to David is because he was good. He wasn't sitting there crying every day about sleeping with Bathsheba. He was like, I'm sitting here on the throne judging, they bringing cases to me, I'm good. Right? He came in there and he was like, dang it. My mind, right? My lev. So in English, this is translated as heart, and this is where we're going to get into redefining how things are translated for us, because how things are translated, the way that things are translated creates action, okay? So if all this time I think my emotion, so once I get over feeling bad, then I'm good. With Yah, not so. Because David got over feeling bad about killing Uriah. He got this baby on the way, he in the kingdom, he good, right?
Right.
He was over the feeling of probably feeling bad about it.
Right.
So it's not a feeling thing. It's not I have anxiety about this. I'm wondering if somebody's going to find out. He's past that. He's now in this different place. And so what we're going to deal with is, just because you don't feel like something doesn't mean that you've made it to the second part of the process. Right? Just because David no longer felt the initial shock of the killing, or the shock of, you get what I'm saying? So, but then it becomes buried. So I'm going to give you a quote that I wrote down. And it is that buried trauma becomes your trigger. Buried trauma will become your trigger. Does that make sense? Okay. And I have another one after that. So let's define what the heart is. The heart is not the thing, it is the thing that beats in your chest, but it's defined that way because of the function of it, not because of how it feels. Everybody says, oh, because the heart's sensitive. Actually, the heart is pretty tough. Right? And when your heart breaks, your heart doesn't break. But what actually breaks is your lev. Lev is, what's a lamet?
Staff goad control.
Staff, goad, control, tor. So the picture of a shepherd's staff, or a shepherd with a staff, that he uses a staff to then control the sheep, right? So to keep them on the correct path.
Right.
So it's the authority. It's the thing of authority. When you saw a shepherd, that's the thing he's carrying for his authority, okay? His authority over who? Those he shepherds over, correct? Okay? And then the bet is house, tent, okay, right. In this context, though, it is the authority inside. The authority inside. So, the heart, or the lev, is the authority inside. It's not how you feel. It's the thing that's driving how you do and how you operate in every single situation. So on your paper, you have some abstract definitions. I just gave you the concrete definition, which is the authority inside, or the authority over the house, or over the head, or over the mind, right? Interestingly, in Paleo Hebrew, and I didn't write it on your paper, but this looks like this. Sorry. It looks like a shepherd's staff, and the house looks like this. I'm going to explain to you something about the brain in a second, because the brain also looks like this. It has one side over here, and one side over here, and a central control system.
Yes.
Okay? Our ancestors were way smarter than westernized culture gives them credit for. I'll just leave it there. Okay, so abstract, it means the inner man, mind, will, the comprehending mind, seat of your emotions. So your emotions sit in your mind, not in your chest, not in your stomach. They sit up here. Okay, I'll define that a little bit further. Your inclinations, your resolutions, the determinations of your will, your conscience, your moral character, the seat of your pride, and the circumcised or uncircumcised heart is the mind. It's not the chest or the male member. It's the mind. Okay? Because you can have a circumcised member and have an uncircumcised mind. Right? Okay. Emotions. I'm going to redefine to you how you feel about emotions. Most people would say emotions are emotions, right? They are what I feel. Scientifically, and not scientifically meaning European science, but the organized process of thinking tells us that emotions are actually physical. They're not emotional. They're not feelings. Emotions are physical. Your feelings are how your mind interprets your emotions. Your feelings, what you feel, is how your mind interprets your emotions. I'll go further. Our mind tells us how to react to different stimuli. Emotions play a key role in decision making. If a person has skewed emotions, then how they react to stimuli and how they make decisions will be distorted. So the reason why the mind is the first place is the last place, but the key place that David asked for cleansing, right, is because it determines so much about how we operate in our everyday life. I can shut my feelings off. I don't feel nothing. I'm hard, right? I can shut that off. But I can't shut off my emotions, which are created by physical, or my emotions, which are physical, which are reacting to stimuli. So I cannot show how what you're doing is affecting me, but it's still affecting me. So just because we learn, and we've learned it through slavery and trauma, how to shut off how we react to the things, doesn't mean that they're not still stimulating a part of us on the inside. Does that make sense? Okay. As Hebrews, we are not taught how to understand our minds and how they function. So if I ask you, like, what's your left brain? What's your right brain? What is your medulla oblongata do? You'd be like, I don't know. I don't care. My brain just works. The reason why so many mind games can be played on us as a people is because we don't know how our brain functions. We don't know that they've studied us as a people. They dissected us. When they shoot us in the streets, they take us in the lab, they cut our heads open, they look and they say, they have this, and look at their pineal gland. It's melanin affects that, and when the sun hits there, let me calcify that thing. And let me do it through their food. They're studying you, but you're not studying yourself. So when you see people in these like false conscious movements, they do have a valid point. You don't know yourself. Because if you knew who you were and whose you were, you wouldn't keep falling into the same traps, right? Okay, so as Hebrews, we're not taught to understand our mind function. So I'm going to give you a brief lesson on just brain anatomy really quick in a very simple form. This is not a college course. Jay could understand it, okay?
Great.
So today, we're going to briefly look at how our brains are supposed to function according to Torah, according to the law and function of the universe. Not how man said they're supposed to function, not how Freud says they're supposed to function, not how a psychotherapist says they're supposed to function, but actually how Torah and how when Yah gave his law, how he knew our bodies would receive it and then put it out. Okay? This will be done in hopes that knowing how a thing works makes it easier to deal with the function in itself. I'll give you an example. If I know that a 2-year-old, right, has certain things that all 2-year-olds do, so like terrible twos. It's not because 2-year-olds are bad. It's because they begin to think for themselves and they're curious and they explore. And so if I didn't know that though, I would be frustrated and I would feel like my 2-year-old hates me.
Right.
But because I know that 2-year-olds and all universal 2-year-olds go through the same place of finding autonomy, then I can better support my 2-year-old through the process of being 2. And then when I learn about 3-year-olds, I can better support my 3-year-old through the process of being 3. Well, my hope is that in understanding your brain and understanding how it works in conjunction with Torah, then you can understand how your brain works and you can support yourself and others in the process of learning Torah.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. Let's deal with the, is my right brain on there? Like, I think my right brain is missing off my page. Literally. Oh, here it is. Okay. The left brain. And you can write in little notes on your thing. So let me tell you how your brain is placed. So your brain is split pretty much down the middle. You have a left brain and a right brain, right? And then you have a midbrain, or this is like your medulla, that part that runs down your spine, sends all those signals. It's very basic. If you want more, Google. But the left brain has a function in communicating with the right brain, and the midbrain then creates action. Does that make sense? Left and right communicate with each other to rectify the things that happen on either side, and the midbrain tells your body what to do with the information that it has, or how to feel, okay? So the left hemisphere of the brain is analytical, dualistic, objective. It's the side that develops abstract concepts, so those things that are not concrete, from the right brain, right? And it gives it breadth and depth. When we use the left brain, we don't see things holistically. We see them in their parts and their relationships and their context. So the left brain is breaking everything down into little pieces and dissecting it all the time. The left brain is associated with the power of conceptual analysis and reasoning. So both inductive and deductive reasoning. It has the ability to explain elucidated concepts both to oneself and others. So I would consider myself as a speaker. What I'm doing right now is very left brain, taking a lot of left brain power to try to take something that I understand in my mind and then to communicate it to you in a systematic way that your brain can then accept it. That's left brain function, okay? So speaking, writing, communicating thoughts in context is left brain function. Left brain thinking is characterized by careful, accurate observation of details, followed by the application of acute inferential reasoning to the resulting data in order to generate new information. A lot of words, but it pretty much means this: understanding one thing from another.
Yeah.
All that to say, it's understanding one thing from another. So the reason why with left brain comes worry and stress is because if you don't know how your left brain works, how you reason, and how you process information, then you'll keep going over this information over and over and over and over in your head. It doesn't make sense. So that's where worry and stress comes in, and then you overload your left brain. So if you don't know how to think, if you don't know how to look at Torah, then you will overload your left brain, and then most people have an overloaded left brain anyways. And then they go to the abstract. So they'll be like, okay, yeah, because see, Eve was just, it wasn't an apple. It was actually sex. And you'd be like, really? Because my systematic brain went all the way through Scripture, and all the way through Scripture, it reconfirms that it was actually eating something.
Okay.
Right? But a person whose left brain is lazy will immediately revert to an abstract, right side thinking brain and not rectify it with logic. Okay? This is all going to make sense, I promise. The right brain handles ambiguity well. So if something's like, I don't really care, I'm indifferent to it. Your right brain's like, okay, that's good with me too. Right? So what happens is when our brain is functioning, what it should be doing is taking that hypercritical thinking side and that ability to think abstract and bridging them together. So my abstract thought, right, if I come up, like for me, sometimes I come up with a thought and I'm like, okay, that's way out there. And so then I'm gonna run it through my left brain. Well, then how does that make sense in scripture? My thought could be way out there and it could just need to be a dumb thought. Or I can go, let me run that thought through Torah and see if my thought stands according to the true filter, which is scripture. Torah is supposed to be the authority within with everything. If you can't find it in Torah, if you can't find it in scripture, it's because it probably wasn't a part of just the natural human experience. Just period. Like everything that death, emotions, you got people who lose their mind, Nebuchadnezzar did, right? You have all of these things that affect the mind throughout scripture. So if you're trying to think of a mental concept and you can't see it in scripture, it's because it probably wasn't something that was common amongst the human experience of people. Okay? All right, so the midbrain is important for voluntary motor function. It's like Torah. It's like the alphabet. It has action. It's like these Hebrew words. It tells you what to do. Okay, so science has determined that each hemisphere of the brain is different for thoughts and functions. Your brain and the giving of the Ten Commandments is split the same way. There are right brain functions in the Ten Commandments, and there are left brain functions in the Ten Commandments. Some are just like, don't create any idols. We gotta be creative to create idols. Create in your imagination and your right brain, like, how can I make this something I can worship? How can I design and come up with something that really like looks nice and then I'm gonna feel nice about it? It's an abstract thing because Yah's not abstract. He's about function. Idols are abstract. They are the creative part of man made so that they can worship the things that are set up in their own minds. And you can go through all of them and kind of see that. So the laws are kind of split that same way. But then the whole law as a function is to get you to do something. It's to get you to do both sides of that. So the Ten Commandments is an expression of all the law in rectifying what I abstractly think with what is logical and then doing what the Most High said to do. That makes sense? Okay. Now to the good part. That was the science lesson. So that's over. Now we're going to get back to this process. How your heart or your lever, your authority within affects your prayer and judgment. Now that you know that everything has to be filtered through the authority within, now we're going to see how it affects your prayer and judgment. And this is the part where I know people are going to be like, might send you into a tailspin for a couple of days, but you'll recover. Okay? Prayer and judgment have to be done with Torah as your authority within. I've done it. I'll talk about me, and I know other people have done it, but if you feel something, and I'm talking about where your stimuli, you've been stimulated by a trigger because of trauma, and then you make a decision about it in your mind, so then your trauma becomes your authority within, and then you say, I'm going to do this. And then you go to scripture and then you justify, or you pray about it and you justify why you're going to do it, right? But it's starting from a foundation of your authority within not being Torah. You created the thought and came up with what you made up your mind first, and then you went to Torah. I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, but I had to hurt my own. Maybe for most people, I'm going to just be generous and say 8 times out of 10 when you're praying, you may just be praying to yourself.
Well, okay.
That's true.
And I'm serious about this. Because people are like, how do you know when you hear from God? People ask me all the time, how do you know when Yah speaks? He speaks through his word.
Right.
And I mean like emphatically through his word. Like audibly through his word.
Right.
Like halt you in your... Is somebody else in the room? Through his word. And I'm going to give you some scriptural examples because I know people are like, oh, here she goes. I'm going to give you some examples of people who have talked to themselves in their own mind, came to conclusions and pursued those conclusions. All right, it's on my note paper. It's right here. Genesis 6:5 says, Then Yahuwah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. His authority within and his imaginations, right brain imaginations, right? And then the thoughts, how he processed it, left brain, were all evil. Y'all saw it. Continually. It wasn't like, oh, some good stuff. No, it was like, all he thought about was stuff. He devised ways to create actions to do things negatively. You don't think anybody during Noah's time was praying?
Say that again.
You don't think anybody during Noah's time was praying? Noah was like, a flood is coming. They're like, we're going to pray that the flood don't come then. Right? Right? Do we not do this as a people? Okay, if you think I'm wrong, then go to the book of Jeremiah when he was like, hey, we're gonna get sacked and we're going to captivity. He was like, no, we're not. Let me make this headrest of iron. And see, nobody's going to, was it yoke of iron? What was it? The yoke of iron. It was the horns, right? It was the horns. And see, we're going to drive them out of here. And he was like, no, it's not going to happen. See what so did he not pray about that? You don't think he consulted with who he thought was Yah? And he prayed and then he was like, you know what? Make a thing of iron. That's great. And then take it before the people. Did Yah tell him to do that? Or did his own mind tell him to do that? Did he think it was Yah though?
Yeah.
See how that gets real tricky? Scary. Scary stuff. All right, next one. Genesis 24:45. This is more in a positive sense. So remember when Abraham's servant goes down, right? And he's going to look for a wife for Isaac. And he goes, and in the verse it says, before I finish speaking in my own mind, in my own heart, he said, then this woman came. So what was he doing? He was rehearsing what he had been taught or told to look for. And then right in the moment of praying, pretty much, he was speaking to himself, but to Yah at the same time. Then the woman comes. He's like, wow, dang, that was crazy. That might have tripped him out. Like, I was just thinking about what he just told me. And that woman came up with yeah, this is crazy. So you can have confirmation from what you've been told by your master in this sense, by that thing physically appearing before you. Okay? Let me give you another negative one. Genesis 27:41. It says Esau had, it's about Esau. So Esau had decided that after his father died and after the mourning period was over, he's going to kill his brother. Did you think he was right? Did you think he thought he was right or wrong?
He thought he was right.
Do you think he consulted the God of his father?
No.
You don't think so? You don't think he prayed about it? I think he prayed about it. I think he thought about it a long time and felt justified based upon his birthright, his order, and do you think he didn't write it through law? You think he did? So his authority within, right? He felt like he was right. So it said, but Esau had aught in his heart, and he sought to slay his brother, and then he justified it logically. He got creative with how he was going to do it. And then he justified it, and then he was going to create action. Okay? I'll give you another. And so the verse says, Esau comforted himself with the thought of killing his brother. So if you comfort yourself with it, which meant that what? He probably felt like the feelings kind of came in. He's like, damn, my brother. Then he's like, no, it's cool. I don't feel like that no more. The feelings are gone, and now I'm going to actually commit the act. Right? Okay. Exodus 4:21 talks about Pharaoh, and it says Pharaoh's heart was hardened. You know why that thought doesn't really convey well to us? Because we don't understand hard heart, but we know a hard head. Yeah. He got hard-headed. His mind, his authority within was made up. He's like, I'm the authority within. Yeah, I'm not the authority within, and he made up his mind to continue to do it. So no matter how many things happened to him, because his mind was already made up, it was done. Okay. Praying or speaking answers from Yah without first dealing with your triggers and trauma will only leave you at best to comfort yourself on your decision. So praying and asking answers from Yah without first dealing with your trauma and your triggers will only leave you at best with comforting yourself on your decision. You're going to justify your decision. Okay? But when you do that, what you often find yourself is in grave opposition to Yah's will. Because Esau was in grave opposition to Yah's will in seeking to kill his brother because his brother was the promised seed. He didn't pray. He didn't consult Yah. He consulted himself. Because Yah would have said, actually, I chose him. So, don't do that. Okay? You are limited to justifying yourself and in your experience with others through your very limited and often skewed understanding of Yah's function. So if you don't understand how Yah created your brain to function, then how you look at the world is going to be very, very off. The Messiah talks about double-minded people. What is double-minded? You do have a mind that works on two sides, but they're supposed to operate as a singular function. So a double-minded person operates on this side and on that side, and it makes a man unstable in all of his ways. Your feelings, right, which are triggered by emotional stimuli, have to be ran through logic. Your feelings, which are triggered by emotional stimuli, have to be ran through logic, have to be ran through a systematic thinking of truth. That's what Torah is. I'm doing that with myself, especially like during those heightened times during your cycle and the whole world is crazy. Like you're crazy, so everybody's crazy. Right? So what do? What happened? Was this true? Why did the person do it? Can I talk to them and ask them why they did it? And then go through all those processes and then act on it. But often we feel it, we act, and then we want to run through all the steps. It's too late then. So that process, I used to always get so frustrated with my husband because we would talk or have an argument. He's like, I'll talk to you about 3 days. And I'd be like, 3 days? I'm at right now. I'm going to talk about it right now. But I understand it. I'm going to think about what you said and how I'm going to respond to what you said, or how I may just feel something about. You may have triggered one of my traumas. So I'm like, oh, now she's fussing and she acting all crazy. Let me just stop, give her 3 days, and then you think about it. And then you know what always happens after 3 days? I'm like, what was it? But if I act on it when I'm emotionally stimulated, then I'm not going to run it through my logic, and then I'm going to be having to pick up and clean up on it, and it's way more difficult than just taking it through Torah. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so the only way that you know that you're hearing from Yah is to filter it through His Word with the Ruach and objectivity. Because see, once again, you'll be like, it's the Ruach. The Spirit is moving. You're not being objective though, because as soon as somebody it could be something that's just a Bible verse. You're like, I felt like this when I read this, and then a person comes along and says, well, what about this? And you're like, well, I didn't think about that. Then you weren't supposed to make a decision about it. You don't make a decision about something and act on it until you've thought of all of the possible variables. All of them. Not some dangling out to the side, but all of them. Okay? So the next one was how your authority within affects your relationships. I kind of hit on that a little bit. But it'll affect how you deal with people. If your authority within is your trauma, or what's been done to you, or how you've been treated, or then guess what? Then you're going to then do that to other people. Or anytime you get in a relationship with a person, whether it's a friendship or not, you're going to filter everything they do through what somebody else did to you. And that's not fair. It's not fair, and it's not Torah. You cannot do that. You can filter it through what they've done, right? But then when they also stop doing those things, you can't filter it through those things either. And not just like when they don't do it today or tomorrow no, period. If they didn't do that thing, then to think up and conceive up that they've done something puts you in bondage. So my next thing was unmastered emotions will leave room for the adversary to become your master. If you don't master your emotions, Satan will master you. Because the end game of this all is your healing. That'll be my fourth point. I'm going to do my third one too. Is your healing. He does not want you healed. Why? Because, Yah does not deal with stubborn, broken people. It's one thing to be broken, right? Because we're all going to go through brokenness. He prophesied in Genesis 13, 15. I always get it backwards. When he's talking to Abraham, and he says, your people will be oppressed. Right? So he already knew you would be mentally just wore out. Yes. Then you get Deuteronomy 28. He already knew you were going to be mentally wore out. But you get the blessings, and then you get Deuteronomy 29 and 30 and 31 and 32 with all the blessings and all the renewal that comes when you're obedient. So if you want to stay broken, and if you want to stay unhealed, and if you want to hold on to trauma, you are ineffective for Yah. You are completely ineffective because He can't use you. I can't use a person. I think I talked about this in purging, where every time something happens, somebody say something to you, now you mad for 6 weeks. You ain't teaching no more. You ain't coming to Shabbat no more. You ain't coming to fellowship no more. You just ticked off. Really? I can't use you because, see, when you go out and you tell people about my word, some people gonna piss you off. Right. And then you're just not gonna go out for 6 weeks till you get yourself back together? Nah, I'm not rolling with somebody like that. That's just like, you can't do that. Well, they were looking at me some kind of way, and I felt like people were triggers. Maybe people looked at you weird growing up, but when you're working for Yah, He's like, I don't care how nobody looks, because you're not supposed to be watching them anyways. Right? I don't care what anybody said to you, because you're not supposed to be listening to them anyways. You should be listening to me. I don't care how anybody made you feel, because they didn't put you in the position I put you in anyways. So how do you care how they feel about you? Does that make sense? Okay. So if Yah already knew that we would go through traumas and we would go through these things, then He already has a remedy for it. So it's just like the lame man that was healed, right? Or anybody that was healed. What if He would have said, get up, take your bed, and walk? And they'd be like, you know what? I thought about it, and I actually like my lame legs. He'd be like, what? Time out? What did you just say? But that's how we're acting as a people. When Yah says, you're whole, I made you whole, period. Not with pause, not with... So what do you have to do? You have to walk in that wholeness. Yes. That's hard to do, though, for people. It's like when you should have got a whooping, but you didn't. And so you always walking around like, I'm about to get a whooping. And your parent is like not even thinking about you anymore. The Most High is like, I knew from Genesis 13:15 to the Deuteronomy 28, to your disobedience, to your false gods, that when you came back into my word, that you would come back broken. I'm not going to whoop you no more. I'm going to say, you're whole. There ain't no more whoopings. I've already whooped you. You've already been whooped. Life has already whooped you. Disobedience to Torah has already it's made your butt soft, and it's made your heart soft. That's why you're here following Torah right now. So if your heart is already flesh now from the chastisement, then why are we still walking around broken? By choice. That's why. It's a choice now. Okay. The next one is, your authority within affects your obedience. If you're always operating from your trauma or from things that have happened to you, then it's going to affect how obedient you can be to Yah. So if I have sin that I don't want to uncover, or if I have things that I want to talk about, then guess what? I'm going to withhold parts of Torah. Until I deal with them, then I'm not going to talk about them. Or then I'm going to create a skewed idea of what they are. So if I'm an adulterer, right? Then I'm not going to really deal with that. Or I'm going to be like, you know what? Some people do things because they feel like they should. Right? That's not Torah. That's not Torah at all. But when you deal with them, then you condemn yourself first, and then you can say, we don't do this because it creates these kind of issues in relationship, and it makes it hard to repair relationship, and it makes it hard, and then it gives people a, wow, like maybe I was thinking about it, but now I don't do it. Because now you can see it in action. But if I don't deal with me, then I won't deal with it, period. And not just with that, but with anything. Like if I'm like, well, you know, I do drugs, and you're like, what? Not me. I'm just making fun. Like, but if that's my thing, right? And I say, but I'm not convicted about it. So then I'm not going to teach you on sober-mindedness. Because I've been affected by it. But if I've been affected by the effects of drugs, what they've done to me, and that I can share with people, this is how it affected me. That a person who was like, man, I was feeling like how you was feeling at the beginning, like it wasn't a big deal. But now that I see what you had to go through, man, I don't want to do that. Right. See how the transparency is never to hurt people, but it's so that people don't make the same mistakes, and you can encourage them out of their authority within, where they're holding things. Okay? I lost my paper.
It's right there. Is it on, it's right there? Right there on the thing.
No, sure did, but it's not the right one.
No.
No. Oh, here it is. Okay, lastly, your authority within affects your healing. If there are any areas of your life that you are not giving the Most High access to, you will not be healed. You won't. You will stay broken. And the Most High is not dealing with anybody that doesn't want to be healed. Because he's like, you don't want to be healed from that? Like, I have healing. Like, literally, I am healing. And you don't want me to, you want me to take that? You're like, no. Take all this other stuff. I want to lose weight. I want to be cute. I want to have a lot of money. It's like, but can I get that pride though? Like, it's right there. Like, it's on the surface. Like, I can just grab it. If you just like come a little closer, you're like, no, I got this. I'll wash this off later. Right? He's not dealing with you. Because you don't want the healing that he knows is necessary. Because people look at Solomon, right? And Solomon asked for wisdom. And it was wise to ask for wisdom, right? And it was wise to ask for wisdom in function to judge Yah's people, right? But the reason why Solomon asked for it is because he knew he didn't have it. It wasn't because I'm so wise. And I just would like Yah to validate the fact that I'm so wise. No, he was like, look, I'm good looking. My daddy's rich. The world is at peace. But I know me, and man, I'm jacked up. And it comes out. It eventually comes out that he knew the reason why I was asking for it the most. I gave it to him, but he's like, man, you have to exercise that thing. You have to keep coming back to me and letting me go, let me drop a little more wisdom in there. But he got it one time. The Most High visited, he built the temple, and then he went buck wild. Right? So if you're not willing to have healing, and healing is not a one-time process, it's continual. If you're not willing to be continually have your mind cleansed, then you're not fit to operate and work with Yah. The reason why two-thirds may not make it is because they're going to stop short of the process. They're going to stop short. You're like, I'm good. No, I got this. This little pride thing I got right here is good. This little self-righteous thing I got right here is good. This little like attitude thing I got right here, I'm good. Because I made it to this level where now, because we'll get to a point in all of our walks where nobody else will be able to see our sin unless we share it. Right. That's why I share. Because you won't be able to see it unless I share it. Because we've been taught how to conceal our sin well. But see, the issue with community is there's a 2/3 in the community that don't want to see you healed either. Right? You have to be careful. The Most High, how much she had talked about, he said, you have ears you can't see, ears you can't hear, your heart is fat, which means that it's covered and it can't be touched. You know, I hate to say it, but when you have weight on you, I got a lecture. Some things just don't feel the same way. Right. Like you poke me here and I might be like, it don't hurt. But if I'm just like skin and bones and you poke me, that kind of hurts a little bit. Right? So he's saying your heart is covered with something that is creating cushion and not allowing me to prick it. And so I'm poking it and it's just like, that's a little comfortable. But a heart that is clean, a clean heart, I only have to barely touch it and you feel it. Does that make sense? So you have people around, though, who are not operating in that same spirit, where they would rather see you broken than whole. Yes. They don't rejoice in wholeness. Because the Mashiach said that. He's like, man, the adversary doesn't want you whole. He was like, man, unless your ears open and your eyes see, and then you be healed. Why does he not want you healed? Because whole people create damage for the kingdom in a positive sense. But if you're always stuck in, well, I'm not this, and I'm not that, and this happened to me, and people was doing this to me, and it's real, it's reality. But guess what? It's ugly too. Yeah. Because when people who really are like, man, but I'm struggling too, like with some real stuff, and what you complain about is like, it's cute. It's like, push through. Push through, because nobody wants to keep coming back to the same people with the same story over and over again. My husband's doing this, my husband's doing this, my husband's doing this, my husband's doing this, my wife is 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 doing this, my kids are doing this, my mama, and you're like, you ain't got off the mama train? You haven't got off the husband train? You ain't got off your kid, your sister, your best friend, get off. I used to be so upset with my spouse because, not that it's entirely 100% right how this happens for him, but it is a resolve where if something is like, you keep hitting a dead wall, he'll just like walk around the wall. And I'm like, but this wall is still here. And he's like, just walk around it. And I'm like, no, let's tear down the wall. He's like, the wall don't want to move, just walk around it. It'll be behind you once you walk around it. And I'm like, no, let's deal with this wall though. And he's like, no, walk around it. Sometimes things in our life are just like, just walk around it. Like it's not gonna change. People are sometimes not gonna change. But if you get stuck at that wall, guess what? You're just as stuck as the wall. Walk around it. Whatever it is, walk around it. Just let it go. Because your healing is imperative to inheriting the kingdom. Period. If you can't accept your healing on this side, you think it's like this magical moment where you're gonna walk up and the Messiah's gonna stand there and be like music, like, oh, and you're gonna walk up and he's like, you're healed. Like, that is totally not the moment. The reason why we are still left on this side after his death, burial, and resurrection is so that we can be perfected. So that we can walk and lay aside the weights. Like, no, that's not, I'm good. I'm good. None of this stuff. Why? Because he's like, I want to see if through adversity, you're going to still walk with me. If people turn their back on you, are you going to still walk with me?
Right.
If everybody else stops walking, are you going to keep walking though? We all so busy looking at people like, look what you doing. It's like, hey, but they walking though. You stopped to watch them.
Right.
You got stuck because you were watching them and now you're done. You're completely ineffective. Lou, I don't know, you guys didn't hear no Lou. Lou asked me a question. He goes, what is the measure for knowing whether or not a person is keeping Torah? If you're just looking at people in this room, how would you know they were or were not keeping Torah? Would it be their fringes? Would it be their head wraps? Would it be them showing up to Shabbat? Would it? Honestly, and my response to it was this: you truly would not know from out on the surface. So it made me come to two conclusions. One, I'm not going to keep looking at people.
Right.
Because if I'm watching you, guess what? I'm not minding my own business.
Right.
Right?
That's true.
And the second thing was, I need to be a lot more careful when people interact with me on a personal level, what that interaction is like.
Right.
Because they don't care whether or not I'm a Hebrew or whether I know the Bible. They want to see what that interaction is going to be like. Because that's going to be their judge of whether or not I'm walking according to Torah.
Right.
That's healing. Healing is getting rid of all that surface stuff, that pomp and circumstance, and being true, real people.
Hey.
All right, I'm going to give you a couple of verses, and then, actually it's just one. Ezekiel 36 and 26. It says, a new heart also I will give you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. Next one. Romans 12, 1 through 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, so set apart, acceptable unto Yah, which is your reasonable service. To be healed is reasonable.
Right.
I made a way for you to be whole. Be healed.
Please.
Lay yourself down already. Take it out. Die to yourself already. It's your reasonable It's your reasonable service to Yah for your heart to be circumcised.
Yes.
He died. He's not asking you to die right now. He's not like, everybody want to follow me, gotta die right now. He's like, no. I'm asking you to lay aside you and accept my healing and walk in that. Be whole. Just be whole. And it says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your authority within. It's a process. You have to constantly be learning the rules. It's like a job. You go to the job, they give you a manual of procedures and You're like, oh, let me go back to this book and see what it says to do when a person AWOLs. Okay. Let me go back to this book and see what a person to do when I can't find, right? You have to keep doing that. It's not this like again, whoo, and you're whole. No, you have to keep measuring up to the standard to make sure that you're operating in your mind according to the standard. Okay, last part, it says that ye may prove, so you got a point to prove.
Right?
You're proving a point.
Yeah.
What is good and acceptable and the perfect will of Yah. You're proving, that's the standard. When you are constantly being renewed, not that when you're never doing anything wrong, when you constantly come back to the drawing board and run your right brain through Torah, the standard, and then act. He said, then you will prove what is good, acceptable, and the perfect will of Yah. Because that's what your action then should be. Your authority within, you should be moved and goaded within according to the standard of Torah. Does that make more sense?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? No? Okay, I'm all done.
Yay.